Hello and welcome once more to an episode of Corey Plays Sharepoint. Last week we looked at installing Hyper-V and it was more than last week. It was like 2 weeks ago. We looked at installing the Hyper-V role and getting a virtual machine set up. And today what we're going to go ahead and do is start installing SharePoint and then actually get SharePoint installed, and in the process the machine will be joined to the domain. This one has a lot more waiting, and just in the interest of expediency I'm going to go ahead and do some real editing because I have a copy of Final Cut Pro on my machine now. Ooh, super cool! So that'll happen, and yeah, have fun with SharePoint. Okay, after some various setbacks, I have restored to the checkpoint before I joined the machine to the domain. Isn't it neat that I've been able to do all this? I have no idea what it's doing to performance. So, as per usual now, or the old usual, last week's usual, what we're gonna do is go to computer and we're going to use the map network drive command. Yeah. This machine is not on the domain, so we need to connect using different credentials. Standalone web domain. And we just need to do that. SharePoint 13. What I'm just going to do is mount the ISO and then go into the ISO. Wait, which one is which? 15, that's the version of Office that we're on. Then we're going to open File, Explorer again, and we're just going to make our SharePoint installation folder here. Name it something slightly different for no good real reason. And we're going to snap these windows like it was Windows 7, and we're just going to copy. We're only going to have one file copy in operation because this is efficiency. Yay! Our files are ready. Okay, we can close that. Okay, so what was happening previously is that we had joined the machine to the domain, and inexplicably it refused to install the prerequisites. Just for fun, this is definitely the correct version of Windows. This is definitely the Service Pack 1. Well, I should just make sure. I'm pretty sure this is the Service Pack 1 thing. While we're in here, I'm going to go to local server, and inevitably I'm going to have to deploy the checkpoints again, but I'm going to turn off the enhanced security configuration because it makes things a pain. It is better, but it is painful. Wouldn't it be funny if I was using the wrong version of the SharePoint installer this whole time? Next. While we wait for that to go, I just want to 2013 stuff. Yeah, it says with SP1. That's the one we've been using. X19. Okay. You don't see any of that. Okay. Configuring the web application server role. While this happens, one other interesting thing that has been going on. What are you? You might be a file server. I don't know. Is that I installed Final Cut Pro on my Mac. Depending on what I include in this video, you might already know that. This is doing more things. Feels like it's doing more things. No. I'm not yawning, you're yawning. Wouldn't it be funny if this works? If this works, the correct sequence then is to install Windows, set your time zone and your IP address as appropriate, then install the SharePoint prerequisites, then probably install SharePoint, then join it to the domain, and then run the SharePoint prerequisite wizard. Not the SharePoint prerequisite wizard, the SharePoint configuration wizard. You'll see that eventually. Few small icons, just because, you know, the local administrator account on our SharePoint server is going to see so much action, and we really need to customize it. Oh yeah, all my virtual machine, it like saved this and then reverted back to this point, which is really neat, actually, that it lets you do that. This is the snapshotting functionality is perhaps more full than I originally thought it was. One of the things I've personally been mourning for recently is the probable loss of VMware Workstation as a product. I don't own it, mainly because I don't have any PCs powerful enough at home that I don't also want to, swap VMs with my server. The big question, of course, being whether or not it's worth using VMware Workstation if your servers are on Hyper-V. I personally think it would be if you were in a situation where you knew that VM was not going to need to move from your server to your workstation, or vice versa. And in my particular case, I do want to be able to move VMs from my server to my workstation and in reverse. And really, in the grand scheme of things, my desktops are not what I would consider super beefy virtualization machines anymore. Despite the fact that they have 16 gigs of RAM, we're moving on beyond the point where I think your desktop and your virtual machines sharing 16 gigs of RAM is really reasonable. But maybe that's just because I'm trying to install SharePoint, which somewhat notoriously uses a raft load of RAM. Come on. Come on. While we wait for SharePoint to go, the whole reason I'm doing this is because I've heard that it should be possible to install and run SharePoint on 8 gigs of RAM. However, if we look at Microsoft's website, their recommendations are for single server. See, it basically says, yeah, it'll run on 8 gigs, but if you want to run everything, and I will, then you should have 24 gigs of RAM. And it's like, interesting. My personal goal was to get to 32 gigs of RAM, just so that I can say, haha, too bad, whatever. I don't care. I'm going to do everything. This is taking a while, and that's good. Perhaps I'll go download some of the YouTube stock music and put it in here. Neat. Oh yeah, this is definitely succeeding. I can just tell. What are you doing, server? Local server. Oh, I see. You're checking for updates, but not doing anything. Oh, oh, SQL Server, native client. I think this is sort of like essentially the modern version of the old Jet engine, but better. Um, Nothing I've ever done. I think this is the same as in Small Business Server. Nothing I've ever done has exceeded the capacity of the built-in database engine, so I'm not too worried about that. It's weird. Previously, this failed when it was joined to the domain, but even though I was doing it with the local administrator account. Weird. I wonder what kind of time shifting I can do. Maybe I can like speed up this part of the video a lot. App Fabric. See, and it's downloading all this stuff from the internet. I wonder if this is even on the CD or if it says in advance that it's going to download it. Okay, so it did some stuff. Yeah, see, here's some things at the beginning. Basically, what it's going to do is like it's going to restart for all these things, and then it's probably going to start over and like try App Fabric again. So if we finish here, it will restart, which we find to be super exciting. Working on the features. Yeah. Okay. Still more restarting. Hyper-V. As opposed to like slow V or lazy V. Or VMware, I guess. I don't know. Whoops. Come on. Oh. Oh, that benchmark. I need to get the results to that. More features. Ooh. Okay. Yeah. A lot of this is basically occupying yourself while you wait for the computer to finish doing things. More like, well, wait for Final Cut Pro to finish doing things, because that's going to be my life the day after I record this, presuming I finish this in one day. Okay, so what should happen now, as a startup item, uh, yep, this is what should happen. And it's basically going to run through everything, and this time, when it finishes, it's going to have a bunch of things in the log that say, I did that, so I skipped it. Click here to check the status of your network drives. Why would you say that? Did you not save my credentials? That's what happened. I'm fine with that. We really don't need that anymore, anyway. Yeah, we're going and we're doing some things. We're installing some Sharepoint prerequisites, which is exciting. Whoops. App Fabric. See, now it's going to install App Fabric. It downloaded that earlier. Data services. Oh, we can get rid of this IIS role now. I've never looked at the IIS role in Windows Server 2012 R2. You really, depending on what you're doing with SharePoint, you don't need to look at IIS directly too often. You pretty much, once you've got it installed, you kind of look at SharePoint directly. So it doesn't matter that much. View screen resolution. What is your screen resolution? This should be 1024 by 768. You could go higher, but we're going to say no for now. C script, yeah. Cumulative update package 1 for App Fabric. So it has downloaded an update package even though we're not telling the server to update yet. We will tell the server to update once SharePoint is installed. Finish. We're going to restart now. This might take a long time, or it might not. We'll see. Oh, it's rebooting the hardware now. Control Alt End, sign in. And if I'm correct, it should be doing the thing. TM, yep, here we are. So it's going to do this for 1 or 2 more cycles. I think if at this point it says you're finished, then what we can do is do the actual installation. That's where I'm going to stop the recording, at least, because what I want to do is take another checkpoint. That will take a few moments, and then I'll continue the recording. For now, this is pretty much going to do what it is. Server Manager is going to launch. I always think that's so hilarious. Installation has been completed. So we're going to hit finish here. Once Server Manager finishes loading, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to shut down the machine because I legitimately don't know if it wants us to restart after that. So because it will make it easier, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say we're going to application installation planned. I'm going to shut this virtual machine down. I'm going to snapshot it, and then I'm going to start recording again. Welcome back. I've failed to sign in, but our prerequisites are installed. My password is typed in, and our machine has been snapshotted. This is pretty cool. We have this chain here, domain to be joined. I copied the files, and then I said, oh no, everything, didn't work. So I went back to rename not domain join yet. Then I went on a different branch to prereqs installed with the local account, and that's where we are now. The prereqs were installed with a local account. We're going to go ahead and close out a Server Manager right now. I like Server Manager, but it's just going to get in our way. We're going to go over to File Explorer, and we're going to explore our way onto the C disk, where we're going to go back to that Sharepoint installation folder, and this time we're just going to run the setup application. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay. Oh. I'm gonna paste this in, and you guys are gonna see black where I paste this in, so that I don't give you my key. Oh no. Paste. Whoops. Okay. Just a moment. Okay, good, we're recording. Well, I ended up putting the key in and hitting the continue button. It wasn't that exciting. I'm going to accept the terms of these agreements, and what we're going to do is use a standalone installation. And what that is going to do is include SQL Server 2008 R2 Express with Service Pack 1 in English. It's going to install everything. We're not going to be doing a farm, at least not right now. The file location, it's hilarious. It's going to install it into the C programs, and the data is going to go into C programs as well. I sort of wish Microsoft would come up with a better way to do that. Kind of just for interest, what Small Business Server 2011 R2 seems to do is let you choose where to put the data, and by default it kind of goes into like C:\\exchange, C:\SharePoint, and so on, which is pretty interesting, and it works okay. I have no real complaints about that structure, and kind of what's interesting, I really should just make some videos about SBS 2011, if only because it's essentially a relic that I personally think needs to be preserved. Um, it operates kind of differently from other Microsoft products just because it's essentially an appliance. Um, this other noise might or might not be me opening a new battery for my Fitbit because I can't do only one thing at a time. So yeah, this looks like it's super exciting. I've got a moment or so to go over to put this over by there to make that easier. I'm gonna do this thing to make it so that we can look at it. There's this whole console thing in here. We're waiting for that. Oh, it's gonna load quickly today. There's this whole section for like, oh, server storage, where you basically tell it where, like, what disks you want things to be stored on. Yeah, so like we choose server storage, and then you can move your Exchange, SharePoint, and users' data from disk to disk. On tect in particular, most of our stuff is on the D disk. Or maybe it's not. It wasn't. Haha. So like iNetPub has a lot of things on it. Yeah, so that's WSUS right there. So there's, not completely lacking in precedent for putting some of this stuff in folders other than program files, which to me still seems weird. Weird. Unrelated, my Fitbit no longer claims that it needs a battery. I'll just set this somewhere where I'm bound to forget it. I can hear disks going and I can't tell what machine that is. That is Narvik. Okay, Narvik is the desktop that I use. Finmark is the same desktop but without a graphics card that I use to host tect. Tect now being a virtual machine, the machine that was PV'd now being called Sodor, Sodor being used to now virtualize a collection of virtual machines that represents the new guard, the replacement for tect, the virtual machine. And given that the name tect is just going to fall off the network pretty soon here, probably the next physical machine I'll just call tect as well, and alternate between a few different host names for my virtual machines, for my physical machines. Sorry. Where'd my phone go? Oh, here it is. How are my Sims doing? Oh, okay. I see. Okay. I'm absolutely not talking to myself about SimCity. But what else are you going to do when you wait for SharePoint? I mean, I guess I could, go over to the desktop and look at something else. Or do the completely irresponsible thing and browse the web in Internet Explorer on my server. Whoops. We're not going to do that. Software requires for business intelligence. It's like the one thing that I'm not doing. My ultimate plan for this is, in fact, to get the Office web applications on here, mostly for interest, but also because there's some really neat multiplayer Office, basically, is easiest when you have the web applications. Not impossible to do otherwise, but it is easiest that way. So, we might go ahead and do that thing. That'll be in a later video, though. I absolutely fail to believe that Office web apps will install in just 8 gigs of RAM. Finalizing installation. This may take a few minutes. I'm not timing this, but it's already been a few minutes, Sharepoint. Just so you know. At least it doesn't say working on it, which we'll see a little later on. I think what'll happen once I get this installation finished, I'm going to run the configuration wizard, and then we're actually going to look at Sharepoint in the next series of videos. And by next series of videos, I mean the next video that I put together, and we'll find some fun things to do with the development Sharepoint server. That will probably include, just for funsies, looking at some ways to get some of the content from here. Look at fd.stenoweb.net. Ooh, so cool. Onto the new machine, Woolsworth, and I might do some of that stuff on my desktop, the aforementioned Narvik. I'll just go ahead and record that from here. It'll be easier than trying to do SharePoint content migration on a Mac. Although, I hypothetically could do it. I think I'm even connected to my SharePoint site. Yeah, this is it. This is like, here's my blog, here are my blog entries. Here's my site pages. I think I can I open these with perhaps TextEdit? Can open them as plain text pages, and that's really interesting. I would have thought that I would have had real content on there. Perhaps if I open a different thing with TextEdit, one of my things that I know to actually have. Anyway, that's what Wikipage ASPX documents looks like. This might still take a few more minutes. Interesting. How to use this library. Oh, there are some forms. Corey W. What's it, images? No, that's a publishing thing. Shared documents. I think I've got a pictures folder in here too. Here's a document I wrote at work. I don't know why everything says modified today. That's kind of weird. Here we go. I thought there was a pictures folder in here. You sure this isn't it? Maybe I never did that. It will be something I will probably do with the new SharePoint server. I've got some programs on my iPhone that let me transfer data to a SharePoint server. I was kind of hoping that OneDrive for Business would let you do that. I will need to go find a SSL certificate. That's the thing I'm going to need. That will happen eventually, and a lot of the things we're going to do are just going to be in plain HTTP for a while. Which is a bad idea. Don't try this at home, kids. Wow, this installation is taking its time to finish. What's even happening? the disk. The disk might well be happening. Task Manager. Right when you install SharePoint too, like once we run the product configuration wizard, there's some neat stuff that happens where basically we need to run the product configuration wizard like 3 times. Only a gig, that's cute. Once SharePoint's installed, this thing will basically be running with like 4 gigs, no, not 4, like 7.6 gigs of RAM in use all the time. It like boots to 7.5 gigs of RAM in use when SharePoint's installed. Eventually I need to look up some database optimization stuff. I've heard that you can get that into a better spot. Not super worried about it. Oh yeah. SQL Server installer. Yeah, it's doing stuff. I sort of wish this was not considered to be a finalize. Like, you're not finalizing, you're still installing. Don't lie to us. Why are you lying to me? Ooh, that's actually kind of pretty. Graphs. Don't lie to me, SharePoint. I know what's up. Wow, I should absolutely have just hit go and then stopped the recording. Finalizing, finalizing, finalizing. Less than a gig. So weird. Ooh. Okay. SharePoint Products Configuration Wizard. I'm going to stop recording and then I'm going to restart recording right now. Okay, welcome back. I went ahead and took a snapshot, that's the word. Wait. Checkpoint. They're called checkpoints. Checkpoint, checkpoint. In here I called it install before config wizard. That doesn't really mean anything. It's not grammatically correct. Hopefully, should something go wrong, I know what it means. We're going to go ahead and tell it to run the wizard now. Basically, this comes up. Just for reference, it's in the Start menu under one of our new apps. Woo, new apps. Where's the scroll bar? Come on. Yeah, here it is. I had to click under SharePoint 2013 products. The reason that that's important is because we're going to be here very soon. Desktop, next. It says that it's going to restart these services: Internet Information Services, SharePoint Administration Service, SharePoint Timer Service. Click Yes to restart the services if required and continue the configuration wizard, or No to exit the configuration wizard. Let's hit Yes and see what happens. Do it hit Next again? Oh, nope, we don't. It's already doing some things. So it's basically going to create a database. I just kind of want to make it so that you can see the memory usage on this. Because what it does is it creates the configuration database, and then it creates like the main content database, and then it loads in a default configuration, and then it loads in some like default content. And as this happens, we can already sort of start to see this happening. We're using like 1.1 gigs of RAM now. Yeah, really went down. Oh, beautiful. 9.9 gigs are available for committing. Let's bring up the hardware monitor as well. Again, this is the hardware monitor for the whole server, but it's worth noting that these virtual machines, and by these virtual machines I mean this one virtual machine, literally the only thing on here. So the disk is going pretty crazy. It's doing some network stuff. That's probably just me being on, remote desktop here. In fact, I bet we can find out while we wait for that. Network total. The thing with the most is in fact term services. So that's not surprising. It doesn't even take that much. You can do this on almost nothing. This is like full color as well. 6 megabits. Highest active time. Oh, 1.2, 1.3. This is getting exciting. See, this is like merely creating the database. If this goes anything like my test installation, we'll have to do this once or twice, and then you'll find out eventually that it actually works surprisingly well, which surprised me. I don't know why I've never gotten this to work. I don't know if it's just like in Service Pack 1 it's massively improved and there was huge problems in 2013 with no Service Pack, or if it's because I was using Server 2008 R2 previously because I've had more experience with that, or what. I think we're seeing memory usage go up a little bit. Yeah, 1.3. Oh, good. Nice. Oh. Oh. Weird. Neat. You can get to that by double-clicking on the task manager, and it will zoom down. I wonder if there's a graph summary view. Okay, that's what it is. View memory. You can even change that as you're in the graph summary view. Time to go work on my SimCity again. Eventually I'm going to have to put my iPhone on the charger. It's at 34%. Yeah, the CPU is going crazy. How much? Did I have more than one? I'm looking at my other computer right now. Hi, Preview Manager, come here. Norambi, which is the name of the other test machine. Settings. just for fun, I did this a while ago, and I did this while I was at work. So you kind of click a button, and then you realize an hour later that it finished. So I have no clue how long this will take. The other machine, though, has the same thing going on. One virtual processor, 8 gigs of RAM. The CPU on my other computer is a lot faster. So I don't know if that's having an impact here. You can see we're kind of at like 100% CPU usage. This is a 2.4 gigahertz Westmere. The other machine is a Sandy Bridge at 3.1 gigahertz. Yeah, 3.1. Sandy i5 3.1. So it's just gonna outgun this by so much. Like, I have a 3.4 gigahertz Sandy at work, and it does almost twice as fast at like CPU benchmarks than the server does, which has never been a problem for usage, but it is obviously a limitation sometimes. It's not like I'm installing Sharepoint every single day, or it's not like I will be once this is finished, this whole project. So I'm not too worried. We're pretty steady at 1.4 gigs of RAM used. Whoa. What is going on? 100 megabits a second disk? I feel like I should be running that in the virtual machine to see what's going on. It might be a disk limitation. I keep saying megabits, but I keep meaning megabytes. Wow. I've clicked on this start menu, and it's just not going to come up. This virtual machine is becoming strapped for resources, in particular the CPU resources. Oh, we're at 5 now. Registering the Sharepoint services. So this is like with the services on the computer. Yeah, it usually gets at least here. We're at 1.6 gigs of RAM used. It's like step 6 or 7 where it fails, maybe 8. Close some tabs on my other computer, cause lol. It's really interesting that Windows Server doesn't show you your disk usage the way that Windows Client does. 16 gigs. We're using, I mean, from the perspective of the server, we're using 9.5 gigs of RAM, because even though this VM is not using all the RAM, it is using all the RAM. It has used it as a disk cache. Oh, I wonder if that's what was happening earlier. Document conversions, launcher service. Let's see, we're still on 5. 1.6 gigs. The server, you were able to see, has 16 gigs of RAM. I'm eventually going to be running Sharepoint, Exchange, a file server, a new Active Directory controller, DNS, and a few other things. And I kind of want to have a Linux virtual machine so that I can get rid of my slice in the cloud. Oh, look at this. This is totally surprising. I didn't expect this at all. Completed configurations will not be rolled back. We're not going to bother redoing anything. So let's totally take our surprised selves to the start menu. Come on. Weird. And we're just gonna basically go, oh, come on. Oh, it's product configuration wizard. Yeah, we're gonna do these things. This is gonna be great. Yeah, it's gonna zoom through the first two and the fourth. And ideally now we would see the fifth. Oh, I remember what we have to do. This failed previously because I was not the domain administrator. I bet we could have done this in one go. Yeah. It's on step 6 now. This could get interesting. What we'll end up having to do is go in and add SharePoint / Corey W as an owner on the main site. It's not a super big deal. Yeah. I bet that's going to be the thing. I knew I forgot to do something. It's installing features. This might be getting further than I had thought. If this works, this will be really interesting because this didn't work on my other virtual machine. It's getting to 7. We're using 1.7 gigs now, provisioning the central administration web application, creating the sample data. Ooh, it's gonna work. I'm almost bothered by this. I mean, I'm not bothered by it because this is good and nice, but I'm almost bothered by it. Oh well, it's black voodoo magic, essentially. Yeah, this step's going to take a little while. We're at 1.8 gigs of RAM, and it appears to be, I want to say improving, but improving's not a good word. We're gaining processes. SQL Server, yeah, see, like SQL Server is going to use 506, 511, 517, 99% of our CPU time, 540 megs of RAM. Is it going to cross over? 560, 570, it almost hit. 170. Now, why would you say SharePoint Foundation? I'm interested. Search. Oh yeah, SharePoint spawns like a million tasks. Here's our big SQL server. This will be a good place to just kind of keep this focused for a moment. Performance 1.9. gigs of RAM used. I wonder if I can have two task managers open. That would be super neat. Probably not. So it's so much CPU time monitoring the CPU, it doesn't have time to do anything else. 2 gigs of RAM. If we go back to processes, we're probably 570. But also look at how many, like, SharePoint Foundation user host code. So many services. Wow. I like how it highlights that in red. Like, look, your critical CPU usage. Oh no. As though, like when you see that going red, you're like, I need to buy a new server. Which, like, I mean, often that's what that means. Certainly, if you are running a server like in day to day, you see that, then you're like, yeah, I need to buy a new server. Still on step 8. Creating sample data. We appear to be using 25% of our memory now, 2.0 gigs. So that's been at 25%. 569.6. It's doing its darndest not to roll over into 570 megs. Come on. I say as though that can, 570.8, as though that can make it any different. See, basically this SharePoint products configuration wizard is writing a whole bunch of data to the database. 573.4. A lot of times when this fails, it fails essentially due to having timed out. So like if we were to have given this a second processor, or even 3 processing cores, it might have helped. The other thing is that having more physical RAM available does help this process. If you can give a virtual machine 32 gigs of RAM during the installation of SharePoint, then the only really good reason not to is that you don't value your time. Or perhaps you might be installing component by component. I've never tried. I don't know if there's a way to use SharePoint without running this configuration wizard. Performance. Still 2 gigs. So weird. Especially because this is all 64-bit. It could be using 6 gigs. Ooh. It will be later. Go, SharePoint, go! Just one more minute until my airplane comes in SimCity. Mm-hmm. 2.1 gigs. Okay. 26% of RAM. 2.2. Oh, weird. It says 2.2 over here, but 2.2, okay. Failed to create the sample. System.argument exception. STDL contains an acid or acid that cannot be translated. I think that's actually that's the error about permissions. Just for fun though, let's go back and configuration wizard. Try this once more. Yes. Yeah, and it zoomed right along to number 5. At worst, we can join the machine to the domain now, and then become domain administrator, run the configuration again, and then it'll just work. It did on the other machine. No good reason it won't here. I just wanted to see if doing it differently would help, because you should be able to run SharePoint on a standalone server without Active Directory. At worst, SharePoint Foundation will work this way. This is SharePoint Server, I believe. We'll be able to find out once we're logged into it. Visio Graphics Service. So yeah, we're going to be on step 5 for a little while again. Okay. Sorry, I'm talking to myself about SimCity again. Exclaiming things, step 7 of 10. This kind of feels like slogging. To be perfectly honest, when you're talking about SharePoint, this is literally the most boring part. Like, nobody likes installing Windows, everybody likes using Windows. The same is true for SharePoint. I'm pretty sure the same is true for Microsoft Exchange. I've never used it. This is interesting to do once, but I've done this a few times over the past couple weeks, and this machine is slower than the one I was doing it on. It's kind of weird, but, whatever. So we're basically gonna let SharePoint do its thing. It's in step 8 of 10 now. Processes, oh yeah, 630 megs almost. Oh. Good to know. Configuration failed. This error basically means you didn't have permissions to do that. There's other ways to do it. You basically have to go through and create all the accounts that SharePoint is going to use. What I'm going to do is join the machine to the domain. The domain already has all those accounts. So, yeah. Are we on? Okay, we're on. we're gonna just go and this thing's sluggish now. Fortunately, properties, we're gonna be rebooting it after we join it to the domain. Yay! Okay, domain. It's getting late in the evening. I know you see that it says 9 p.m. It is actually 9 p.m. That's late for me. Close, restart now. Woo, we're gonna restart real quick. Woo, yeah, stopping services. So cool. My hope is that this is like the other machine, and just as soon as this finishes rebooting, we can log into the domain administrator's account, run the Sharepoint configuration wizard again, and then go to central administration and add the domain administrator as the Sharepoint administrator. So cool. Wow. Choose an operating system. So weird. Yes, of course I want that operating system. I don't know why it did that. Hmm. 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 Oh, that's funny. I have unrelated paper in my hands. That paper is funny. Windows isn't funny. Windows is super serious business. Serious business. SRS, BSNS, apply the security policy. Words. It's getting late. I'm recording this on a Thursday. Friday nights I'm typically busy. Saturday mornings I'm typically busy. Best case scenario, I get this video published on Sunday. Just as a heads up. Some things went wrong earlier, or else I would have been able to record more things or start the editing process. Yay! Okay, Control-Alt-Delete. We could probably do this from Wellsworth Administrator, but I'm just gonna Core W, enter my domain password. I'm gonna use the domain administrator account because that did work on the other server, Normby, which is of course hosted on Narvik, the desktop. So this should work here as well. Oh. Oh, Herf. Go to the Start menu. What is wrong with you? All programs. I feel like something's wrong. Maybe it's just weird. Product configuration wizard. Yes, we do want to do this thing. I want to go to there. Okay, next. Yes, next. And close that, close that. It's running, we're off to the races. Task manager. More details, performance. Xeon. 1.6. Yeah, we're at step 5 now. So this is going well. I'm going to close you down. I don't think we need any of that. Close all these tabs. Get rid of all this stuff. Yeah. 1.7 gigs. Okay. Yeah, we're well on our way. I mean, it was doing this quickly before. I think at the very least it'll actually complete. This is probably where we'll start to see the timeout errors. Registering SharePoint features. For some reason, I thought that failure was here in the registration phase, not in the data creation phase. I don't know. I take really poor notes on what I'm doing. I just sort of hope that my impression of the task suits well enough. That's interesting. 7 of 10. Oh, my phone has just 10% battery. It has decided to forget the cell phone radio exists. Oh, wait, not that one. Airplane mode. Turn airplane mode off. It's angry at me. Creating sample data 1.8. Mm-hmm. 1.9. On one hand, I basically get that there's no realistic way for this to know for sure like what's going to happen. On the other hand, I really wish there was like some kind of indication like that it was on row 4,000 of 12,000 or something of operations. Still creating. Still creating 2.1 gigs in use. Two point oh. Ooh. Ooh, we're on step 9. Yeah, SharePoint web application content files. Woo! I think we're almost there. I don't know how we got there only using 2 gigs of RAM. Pretty sure my other virtual machine is using like 7. Yeah. Finalizing the configuration. Maybe it restarts the services again and then balloons. We'll probably find out more about that in the next video. Hmm. 30%. Ooh, 2.5. Oh yeah. Ooh, configuration successful. Finish. Click Finish to close this wizard and navigate to the default SharePoint web application homepage. This is probably going to tell us that we're not allowed if it launches. Ellsworth. We're waiting, we're waiting. If I had to guess, this is going to chug for a while and then access deny us. I'm going to end this now and say that next time we meet, you'll see a SharePoint website.